All the way back in episode 2, Neil and I discussed a particular event from 1997, the Phoenix Lights. Now, at the time, the then Arizona governor, Fife Symington, trotted out an aide of his dressed as an alien, which went a long way towards ridiculing the event. Then 10 years later, he reverses his stance and comes out as being someone wholly in support of blowing the lid off what really happened, and he has publicly said that he believes these were extraterrestrial vehicles. So what do we make of former Governor Fife Symington? Join myself and Neil here on Aliens Explored as we discuss this controversial character. And of course, please as well, join me in thanking our Explorer of the Week, Jonathan Perna. Now, it is thanks to Jonathan and people like him that we are able to do these episodes and do them hopefully in an entertaining way. Why don't you visit our Patreon just like Jonathan did at patreon.com/Aliens Explored and see if you fancy being Explorer of the Week, just like Jonathan Perna. Whilst you're at it, why not have a look at our current Indiegogo campaign to raise funds for a big documentary all about the crop circle phenomenon. You can find details at cropcirclesexplored.com. Aliens Explored is a weekly podcast exploring famous and obscure cases of UFO sightings, alien abductions and other strange events from both a believing and a skeptical perspective whilst keeping an open mind. I'm Stu Jackson, a professional actor and amateur ufologist with a particular interest in the crop circle phenomenon. I'll be debating that otherworldly visitations are real. The truth is out there.
And I'm Neil Kelly. I'm a professional actor as well and used to work for the military as an intelligence analyst. I'll be arguing from a more doubtful point of view. I mean, it's all a bit far-fetched, isn't it? Hello listeners and welcome back to Aliens Explored, your weekly look at all things extraterrestrial and paranormal. I'm one of your hosts, Neil Kelly.
That must make me Stu Jackson then, mustn't it?
Yeah, I suppose so. my process of elimination.
How are you doing, Neil?
I'm doing very well, thank you. Yeah.
Good. Are you still enjoying your Mr. Monopoly gig?
Enjoying. Enjoying. That's an interesting word to use. Yeah, I am. Yeah, if
you're enjoying the money.
I like having it's not great money, but it's regular money, and it's more than it's more than my outgoings. That's quite significant, and
that's a win.
Okay, here's the pro. It's a fun job.
Yeah.
The hours are long, but I'm only working, in spurts. I spend a lot of time sitting around reading books, so I work. It's long hours, but yeah, occasionally I just every now and then pick up the top hat and cane and go, and hello, welcome to Monopoly Lies Eyes, and so on. It's close to home, so my travel costs are literally zero, and my travel time is negligible, and that is a huge advantage for any job, I think.
Of course, you get free travel around
now
London,
that I'm a
you?
pensioner, yeah, I travel free on the tube outside of rush hour. But as we, in off-peak time, we tend to start only in the afternoon and only in the mornings at weekends. In peak times, We do start in the morning on weekdays, and I would have to pay, but you're talking £3.20 a day. So, yeah, that could possibly be 4 days a week, because it's Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. So you're only talking about £12.80 is the maximum. If I was working every morning, £12.80 a week, I think I can run to that. That wouldn't take my budget. And 35 to 45 minutes travel time. So door to door, from when I walk out my front door to when I get up off my arse here to when I sit down in my dressing room. Yeah, 40 minutes.
I remember back in the day, before I ever dreamed of living in London, I used to think half-hour travel to work, that was a long way. That was a long time travel.
You're used to living above the shop here.
Basically.
You come downstairs.
But no, 10 minutes travel to work, especially when I was living in Swindon. That was like a normal. But yes, living in London. Hour and a half each way, that's nothing. It does give you a different perspective.
It does. I'm sure some of our American friends will travel great distances to work. They jump in their car and drive for hours.
Oh, far more than we do. Far more than we do. Now, speaking of different perspectives, so way back in the mists of time, do you remember when we started this podcast, Neil?
It was a couple of years ago now, wasn't it?
It was. It was July 2020, back when we started. Our second episode was about the Phoenix Lights. How well do you remember that?
I remember the Phoenix Lights. I remember what they were.
Remember that we did talk about them.
I remember we talked about the Phoenix Lights, yes.
So the Phoenix Lights were basically a series of lights seen over Phoenix. That sounds obvious, I know. Back in March of 1997. And they were captured on film, photograph, witnessed by huge amounts of people. And it was a big unexplained event at the time. Now, what we're talking about this particular episode is not so much the whole event of the Phoenix Lights, although it might be interesting to revisit some of our earlier shows.
Now there was I remember there was confusion over this because there were two sets of lights, and
yes, there were.
There was some lazy journalism or confused journalism involved, where they were showing one set of lights but reporting another.
Oh, don't talk about yourself as lazy journalism, mate. You're absolutely right.
I remember that.
It's been conflated and confused, and it's easy to get confused, basically. I think there was some in 2001, was it, as well?
2007, 2008, which were attributed to military flares dropped by fighter aircraft at Luke Air Force Base, and flares attached to helium balloons released by a civilian, respectively.
Yes. Attributed to. We covered that one on the episode. So if you want to go back and listen, listeners, it is episode 2. So what we're talking about today, though, the governor of Arizona, Fife Symington.
Yes.
Now, he... a little bit controversial in ufology. He's
a bit of a character, isn't he? A bit of a character.
He is. He called a press conference about the Phoenix Lights at the time and said, and we've apprehended the person responsible and bring him out. And they wheeled out looked for all the world like a grey alien. Very tall guy in a rubber suit, because he takes the mask off and look, it was his chief of staff or whatever they call them. It was his employee anyway.
Someone called Jay Hyler.
There you go.
Dressed in a costume complete with oversized head and eyes, and Symington at the time said, "This just goes to show that you guys are entirely too serious."
Yes. He took the piss.
He took the piss.
He took the piss. And, of course, he didn't make many friends in ufology when he did that. Hard to understand why, right? Yeah, so that was that. Sometime after that, because he was a witness to these lights himself, let's not forget, sometime after them, he's come forward and he said, well, no, I did see them. They were strange. They were, it was astonishing. I couldn't, in fact, I mean, he wrote quite a lengthy, if you will bear with me, Neil, I will read you his exact words on this subject.
Okay, I'll get into my bearing with you position. Get comfortable.
Are we sitting comfortably? Then I'll begin. He said, in 1997, during my second term as governor of Arizona, I saw something that defied logic and challenged my reality. I witnessed a massive delta-shaped craft silently navigate over Squaw Peak, a mountain range in Phoenix, Arizona. It was truly breathtaking. I was absolutely stunned because I was turning to the west looking for the distant Phoenix lights. To my astonishment, this apparition appeared. This dramatically large, very distinctive leading edge with some enormous lights was travelling through the Arizona sky. As a pilot and former Air Force officer, I can definitively say that this craft did not resemble any man-made object I'd ever seen, and it was certainly not high-altitude flares because flares don't fly in formation. The incident was witnessed by hundreds, if not thousands, of people in Arizona, and my office was besieged with phone calls from very concerned Arizonians. The growing hysteria intensified when the story broke nationally. I decided to lighten the mood of the state by calling a press conference where my chief of staff arrived in an alien costume. We managed to lessen the sense of panic, but at the same time upset many of my constituents. I would now like to set the record straight. I never meant to ridicule anyone. My office did make inquiries as to the origin of the craft, but to this day they remain unanswered. Eventually, the Air Force claimed responsibility, stating that they dropped flares. This is indicative of the attitude from official channels. We get explanations that fly in the face of the facts, explanations like weather balloons, swamp gas, and military flares. I was never happy with the Air Force's silly explanation. There might very well have been military flares in the sky that evening, but what I and hundreds of others saw had nothing to do with that. I now know that I am not alone. There are many high-ranking military, aviation, and government officials who share my concerns. While on active duty, they have either witnessed a UFO incident or have conducted an official investigation into UFO cases relevant to aviation safety and national security. By speaking out with me, these people are putting their reputations on the line. They have fought in wars, guarded top-secret weapons arsenals, and protected our nation's skies. We want the government to stop putting out stories that perpetuate the myth that all UFOs can be explained away in down-to-earth conventional terms. Investigations need to be reopened, documents need to be unsealed, and the idea of an open dialogue can no longer be shunned. Incidents like this are not going away. About a year ago, Chicago's O'Hare International Airport experienced a UFO event that made national and international headlines. What I saw in the Arizona sky goes beyond conventional explanations. When it comes to events of this nature that are still completely unsolved, we deserve more openness in government, especially our own. There you go.
Says the guy who treated it all as a bit of a laugh.
Exactly.
At the time. Now, speaking of reputations, his took a bit of a knock, didn't it? Because shortly after the stunt with the chief of staff in a in an alien suit. Later that year, he was convicted of bank fraud charges stemming from his bankrupt real estate empire, although the conviction was later overturned and he was pardoned by President Clinton before the federal prosecutors decided whether they would retry the case. That's a bit... Really? Someone who's...
So he's charged with it. The charge gets overturned.
Someone who's a real estate baron with his real estate empire gets convicted of bank fraud charges, but gets a presidential pardon before the federal prosecutors can retry the case. So that's a bit... Does that kind of thing happen? Is that normal?
I have no idea. I expect a lot of things happen. Now, just to clarify, that statement I just read out was from 2005, the National Press Club event that he attended.
Right.
It seems like it's not uncommon for us to have U-turns in ufology from official spokespersons. The most famous one, of course, being Roswell, when the RAF say, yes, we've captured a flying saucer that crashed. Oh, no, it was a weather balloon.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So famous U-turn, but not usually this way round.
Well, and I can also see, in other areas of life, not necessarily to do with UFOs, that people, when they're working in an official position, have to say one thing. They have to say the official line. But later, when they're no longer in that position and they can speak freely, they say, well, no, it wasn't like that at all. I mean, politicians do it all the time, don't they? They're politicians, military people.
Do you think perhaps that was the case then, that he was coerced or put under pressure to ridicule the event at the time?
Maybe put under pressure. Maybe he put the pressure on himself. He thought, I don't want to get in the news for all the wrong reasons. I don't want to get, because people who claim to have seen UFOs do attract a certain amount of ridicule, because there are people actively out to debunk them and make them look ridiculous.
I mean, less so now than there were 15 years ago, 20 years ago in particular. But yeah.
So we're talking 26 years ago now.
25,
25 years ago. Yeah, 25 years. So, yeah. So that might have been an environment where he felt he couldn't do anything but make a joke about it. Maybe his real estate empire was more of a concern.
I'm wondering if there's another side to this where it's perhaps a bit more simplistic than that. That at the time it happened, he thought, oh, do you know what? There'll be a logical explanation for this. Oh, look, the UFO nuts are at it. Let's do a big grandstanding display. Might get us in the news, might get me, talked about a bit, because obviously marketing is quite a big thing for politicians. Remaining relevant in the news is quite important over here as well as in the States. So perhaps that's what he thought. He saw a way of making himself relevant. And then after the backlash from many, many people, he's thought, and maybe the U-turn is another way to make himself seem relevant. I'm quite cynical about the guy, I must admit. I didn't realise how cynical I was.
Now, he was a member of the Republican Party. So he was elected as the 19th governor of Arizona from 1991 to 1997. I guess his tenure as governor ended with him being held up on fraud charges. But so 1991, that was the end of George H.W. Bush's term of office, wasn't it? When did Clinton take office?
No good asking me. I rely on Google for such things.
I think Clinton took office around about 1992. He did
1993.
1993. Okay, so he did
January
2 terms.
20th, so you're not far off at all.
Yeah. 20. Yeah. So he was elected in 1992 and took office in 1993. So basically he was a Republican governor during a Democrat administration. I'm trying to work out. I'm trying to think what bearing that might have on the way he behaves in the event of something.
Well, it's also
odd.
really interesting that a Democrat president will pardon a Republican governor.
Yeah, but for a lot of Democrats and Republicans, there's not, you can hardly put a cigarette paper between them, can you? In terms of their politics. I mean, I know the gulf is wider now.
We live in much more partisan time.
Yeah. In those,
I'm curious as to why the pardoning. I mean, maybe it was just genuinely. Maybe there was a miscarriage of justice that was witnessed. I'm a great believer in, just because someone's got a criminal record or been charged with something doesn't automatically mean that they must be guilty.
No.
There are... And just because
you're not a police officer, so you don't come to that assumption.
And just because they're a politician doesn't automatically make them evil. Even Tories.
Even Tories, yeah. Well, I suppose Republicans are the American equivalent of Tories, aren't they?
Yes, they are. They're the right wing.
But I suppose the Democrats are the equivalent of our current Labour Party, which calls itself more sort of centrist, but is actually quite a way to the right of centre.
It used to be left wing.
Yeah, it was briefly for a while.
But yeah, so this.
I mean, I can see that he had a change of heart. That when he was speaking as governor, with a failing business empire, or maybe he knows the cops are on his tail. But that aside, that speaking the first time when he ridiculed it, he was speaking pretty much in an official capacity as a member of the government, and then later he spoke in a private capacity and said exactly the opposite. I don't think that's too uncommon. So
does that sounds like it lends credence to what he said latterly then?
I would say so, yeah. I can see how what he said first, he could have been under pressure, either political or whatever, commercial. But when he spoke latterly, I can't see where the pressure would have been coming from. He'd have been speaking as a private citizen with nothing to lose. But also speaking in a more, as you said, in a more permissive environment.
I mean, it would have been slightly more, but not much more by that. You're only looking at 8 years.
Yeah.
8 years difference.
A lot can happen in 8 years.
It can. Let me just check. No, sorry, 2007. No, I'm saying 2005. So 2007. So 10 years. So yeah, things have changed quite a bit. I mean, they're still changing to this day. I hear a lot. Talking about it changing a lot. I hear a lot on Twitter, on UFO Twitter in particular, about disclosure and is disclosure happening? Isn't it happening? And people seem to look at disclosure as a binary thing. Now I'm going to stick my stake in the ground and say it's not binary. I think disclosure is happening. I think it's a sliding. It's a ramp. It's not a on-off situation. It's a ramp. I think the fact that the Pentagon have come out and released the videos of Tic Tac and things like that, they've publicly said that there are things in our air space that defy understanding. I think disclosure is happening. It's just happening slower than some people would like.
Well, I can see how things were different in the Cold War when people believed that the United States enemies, the Soviet Union and China, were technologically on a par, or perhaps occasionally would leapfrog the United States with the technology. And And that to admit that there was something in your airspace that you don't know where it's come from, that could be an enemy aircraft as much as a UFO. To admit that there are things coming into your airspace that you have no defense against, that I imagine that they could be more comfortable with it now. Now that it's acknowledged that America is way militarily superior to any potential rivals.
Well, now there's an actual war going on with Russia. I would have thought now would be more scary than.
Well, no, but I think what's happened since the war in Ukraine is that military analysts' estimations of Russian military power have been rapidly revised downwards. That they are nowhere near as it was assumed when they went into Ukraine. They would just roll in. It was assumed by us, but we now know that actually NATO had been arming Ukraine for a long time with the latest high-tech weaponry. Obviously, the Russians weren't too aware of that because they just rolled in straight into a shitstorm. I mean, you look when America invades a country. They haven't done it for a little while, but when they do, they will bomb the shit out of it first. Before a single GI sets foot on enemy soil, it will have been any kind of enemy capability to fight back would have been bombed to hell. So the Russians didn't do that. They just rolled across the border expecting that they'd just take the country, seemingly, and then found, oh, actually, these people can fight back.
Good. So they should. Anyway, we've gotten off topic somewhat.
But what I'm saying is that there is an environment now where America can more readily admit to odd things in the sky where they don't know what they are and weren't able to track them. And there's less fear that might actually be a Russian or a Chinese advanced aircraft.
Yes. So coming back on, because I want to talk again about this initial reaction from Symington, this press conference in 97 when he brought out his chief of staff dressed in a rubber suit. Have you watched that video on YouTube?
No.
Okay, he doesn't, to me, look like a man who's saying something under duress or saying something he doesn't want to say. He looks very calm, very relaxed, he's so at ease and playful. He's playful about the whole thing. The whole just goes to show you guys taking it all too seriously. That's before he takes the head off this rubber suit, incidentally. Because they said we've apprehended the person. I'm paraphrasing a little bit, but we've apprehended the person.
We've captured. I think he said we've captured an alien.
No, he doesn't say we've captured an alien. He says,
okay.
He keeps it quiet that he said, obviously we've had these lights and we've apprehended the individual responsible. Will you please bring out that individual for all to see? It doesn't mention alien at all. And they bring out his chief of staff in this rubber suit. Now, the reaction from the press is like, what's this? What's going on? It's like, you get a few murmurs, small amount of laughter, but only a very, very small amount. People are wondering what the hell is going on. And that's when he said, just goes to show you guys take all this far too seriously. And then he takes the mask off. So, I think that's been blown up. Oh, it shows you take it all too seriously. As a phrase, I think it's just because they didn't burst out into raucous laughter. No, because they were wondering what this is a governor, a state governor. What's he playing at? What's he doing? Is this a joke? Is this
a guy in his last year as state governor, as it turned out?
Obviously, did not know that at the time. He might have done.
He might have. Yeah, he might have known that.
Might have predicted the end. But there we go. So, like I say, his whole demeanour with that was not someone. I personally think he's done the switch around. I think he did the prank, the publicity event as a way of getting publicity. Simple as that. I think that's all it was, a publicity event. I think he's then changed his story to remain relevant.
Perhaps.
I don't think he's doing it because he truly believes in disclosure. I think he's jumping on the bandwagon, personally. That's my personal belief. You said earlier you think he had a genuine turnaround. Do you still feel that way?
Who can say? I honestly don't know. I mean, he's also an Air Force, former Air Force captain. So I can imagine in the Air Force they're inclined to be sceptical about anything fanciful. Mm-hmm. They rely on cold, hard facts. But I can also, there's a lot of people in the Air Force saying, no, these things are real because we've seen them. We see them every day.
Well, certainly that's what he was referring to in his statement at the press club conference was, he most of the speakers were military or ex-military.
Well, maybe, some of his former military colleagues, his comrades, got in touch with him and said, what are you playing at? We've seen these things all the time. But I don't know what he did in the Air Force. Maybe he was a base waller, a desk jockey, like I was. Maybe. Yeah, and maybe. And the people who are on the front line, they're the cutting edge guys actually flying the planes. So, you don't know what you're talking about, and you've disrespected us.
Yeah.
So,
Could be. What do you think, though, listeners, is Fife Symington? I mean, what a name, Fife Symington. Is Fife Symington, did he have a genuine turnaround, or do you agree with me, was he just doing it for the publicity in both cases? Do let us know what you think. We'd love to hear what you think. You can email us, aliensexplored@gmail.com. You can contact us through Facebook and Twitter by searching Aliens Explored, or by simply clicking on the links in the description below. And if you click on the link to our Patreon page and select one of our tiers, any tier you like, then you get exclusive access to our Discord server. I talk about this a lot. It really does get really interesting in there, some of the things that are discussed. So, you get to join in, and you can talk about this episode. You can talk about any of our episodes or anything going on in ufology with like-minded people, or people who might take a different stance, because we have some healthy debates in there as well.
Yeah, has Jerry come back at all?
Jerry's not come back to us. He's not in the Discord server. It has to be said. Although he'd be very welcome in the Discord server, of course. Join us next time, though, when we'll be discussing Philip J. Corso, who was rather heavily involved with the Roswell incident. In the meantime, keep watching the skies above Arizona or whatever state you happen to be in, or country, or wherever you are in the world, because we have listeners all over the globe. So wherever you are, keep watching those skies.
See you next time.
Take care. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Aliens Explored is a Fecal Films production in association with Juicy Falls. Music by Darren Mafucci and editing by Stu Jackson. Find us on Twitter or Facebook by searching Aliens Explored, or visit us on aliensexplored.com.